It's a bird.
It's a plane.
It's the Glute Guys. All right, welcome to the Glute Guys Network. I'm Dr. Aaron. We are on Spotify and on YouTube.
And I'm Dr. Tom, and we're back again to bring you some latest health news and give our insights as physical therapists.
Today we're looking into mouth muscle mass and its effect on sarcopenia, or relation, I should say.
Yeah. Well, first, Aaron, I think we need to get into what sarcopenia is. A lot of people aren't going to really understand exactly what sarcopenia is.
Yeah, so as we get older, muscles tend to get weaker. So sarcopenia is literally just that. Your muscles get weaker as we get older.
Mm-hmm. Start to atrophy and shrink down. So it's normal. Yeah. It's a normal process.
So basically, these people in Japan decided to look into the masseter muscle volume. The masseter is this muscle right here. Mm-hmm. If you squeeze your mouth, you can actually feel those muscles working. Mm-hmm. We'll put a picture up.
Big old masseter muscle is going to go right here.
Yep, big old masseter. What they were trying to figure out is how they can test for sarcopenia so that you can help prevent it, help it from you want to stop it from getting as bad as it can.
Yeah, you want to slow the progression of it because naturally sarcopenia is going to happen. It's just like we can't stay in the Greek godly shape that me and you are in for our entire lives. So,
yeah. That's true.
Eventually, age catches up to us, and Father Time is not very nice.
Yeah.
So, but you can do things to help slow the progression. And if we can use this as a tool to monitor for when it's progressing too fast or when you have early signs of it and you can kind of determine like age ranges of where you should be, we can start to use more of these measures that we'll talk about in a second of how we can try to slow that progression.
Yeah. And like the easiest way to mitigate it is just exercise and eat healthy. Yeah. It sounds simple, but if you have protein in your diet, it helps maintain muscle mass, and you have to use your muscles. If you don't use it, you lose it.
I mean, how many podcasts do we have to make for these people to understand, the audience, that motion is lotion and moving is good for you?
Yeah, your muscles don't get weaker if they just move. You feel better.
Get up and move.
So exercise. Yeah, so basically, this was another study that they looked into, I think, 1,000 people. It was a longitudinal study, I believe, and they literally just looked at the size of the masseter muscle. They used an ultrasound, which actually they said in the study you shouldn't do because the ultrasound is not very accurate for determining size. Like they said, a CT scan would be better.
Yeah, because you'll see the muscle on an ultrasound, but you're not going to see much other than like the first couple of layers because it's not penetrating.
Like actually measuring it is hard to do in that.
Yeah, especially for the masseter muscle. So I wonder if there's, other ways or different muscles that you can measure that would give you more accuracy than the masseter. I like the idea of picking the muscle as it makes sense. Gold standard.
I don't see why you can't just do any muscle.
Right. And I do want to add really quick, because Aaron mentioned that it was a longitudinal study. All a longitudinal study is it was taken over a long period of time. This one, it could have been years, it could have been months. Most likely in the sarcopenia state, we're talking years just to see if there's any kind of progressions with anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't see why you can't just pick especially with sarcopenia, when you start to see the later stages of it, the biggest risk is falls.
Actually, we're a little bit of a dope rope because the study talked about appendicular skeletal muscle mass. So on your appendixes, that's like your arms, your legs.
Appendages.
And looked at whatever they are. Appendages.
The appendix can get taken out sometimes.
Appendages. It's getting late.
It is late. It is.
But on your appendages, you have certain muscles, and they weighed out the mass of that. And again, they didn't really talk about how they actually measured that mass, but they compared that to the masseter size. So in the study, they actually found that 1 millimeter increase in masseter thickness showed a significantly reduced risk of sarcopenia by 45 to 57% in elderly patients that were hospitalized for hip fractures or in nursing homes. Mm-hmm. So that's actually pretty huge. Like 1 millimeter is really like that big.
Yeah.
That's like nothing. So it shows how important this study actually was, how it actually is beneficial to look at something like that.
I mean, when you think about 1 millimeter, it's not that much, but when you expand it over like a large muscle, like a quad, it's a significant amount of muscle that you're losing in relation to something that, like, for a muscle that you utilize for walking, for balance, for standing.
Yeah, so I think what you mean is like a masseter is like that big.
Yep.
Quad is like that big.
Yep.
Actually, yeah, maybe that big.
It varies average, I would say, yeah.
So, I mean, we could actually put a picture of both probably up, right? Just so you
Yeah.
can see the size difference.
I'll pop up somewhere up top just a picture, even just like a cross body section of what sarcopenia looks like, specifically for like the quad muscle per se, just so you can see
Yeah.
like the shrinkage of that muscle over time and how a lot of it gets replaced with like fat cells. It's like, because if you look at the legs and you do measurements, like they might not change much in size. It's because the tissue starts to just get replaced.
Yeah, that's definitely true too. Well, I mean, I think they do get smaller, but the fat cells get bigger as well.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. You start to see more fat deposits, and partly we can blame not being as mobile or being as active.
Mhm.
You
So-
start to see more fat storage.
Other signifiers of sarcopenia are aging. So, I mean, like we said, sarcopenia has to do with aging. So the older you get, it tends to happen. A big thing with aging too is that people tend to think that aging is like a cliff that you drop off of, where in reality it's more like a gradual decline. And then if you never exercise or eat healthy, then it is a cliff.
Yeah, you can speed up the aging process
Mhm.
through. I mean, not exercising is one big one. Other like cofactors can just be things that you've done. Smoking will age you faster, for instance.
Yeah.
We know that that's a
Yeah.
fact. Alcohol can age you faster if you start to drink it in higher intakes. It's stuff like that. Repeated exposure to the sun will technically age you faster too.
Yeah, but we also have to remember too that like just because you drop off a cliff doesn't mean you can sort of get back to where you should be, or at least close to it. Like that's another benefit of this exercise in general.
course.
You start doing the stuff and it actually gets you back to where you should be.
Yes.
And that's why like someone like us, like physical therapists actually benefit, or they will help people because we try to get you where you're supposed to be instead of way below it.
Yeah.
And that like goes into a lot of other stuff too. We'll probably talk about another time, but like something like Parkinson's, it's the same thing. There is a decline, but it's most of the time not like a steep decline. It's gradual.
Yeah.
And then people here, they get the diagnosis and they're like, oh, whatever, I'm not going to do anything. And it gets a lot worse.
Yeah, it's all symptom management with everything too, of course. And if you don't, it's the old saying, we've said it numerous times too, is if you don't use it, you lose it. So it's all about just staying active, which from my personal experience in my my field of physical therapy, I'm constantly telling my patients like the best thing that you can do is just to stay moving.
Yeah.
Depending on like the patient and whatnot too, I'll tell them like, listen, I still want you moving and doing things at home. I don't want you to be afraid. Every patient's different.
Yeah.
But I need you to be moving and I'll work around it.
Yeah, like the instances where you're not supposed to move are very rare. Like if you have a fracture in your bone, you probably shouldn't walk on it.
Post-op surgical patients and stuff like that. Like, oh, you just had a rotator cuff repair? Let's not move the shoulder.
Yeah. Like do it with a physical therapist or someone who actually knows what they're doing. Or
yes.
Even like some neurological conditions like MS, like you still want to move. You don't want to move too much because then your body's just wiped out.
Of course.
And then it's like you sort of set yourself back. But those are like not really that common.
No, exactly. It again, like I said, it's all patient client dependent. So you just have to kind of take it with from person to person.
Yeah, you take it with a grain of salt.
Mm-hmm.
The other risk factors they brought up, I mean, we said aging already. Reduced BMI. I thought that was an interesting one. Sort of makes sense. If your BMI is higher, if your weight is higher, you're going to have more mass and girth. If your BMI is lower, there's a chance that you have less skeletal muscle mass as well.
Yeah, you end up being in that that underweight category, which like a lot of people think like, oh, like that's probably better than being obese. Not necessarily. Neither one is really good.
Yeah,
so
like I could think of a few patients now that are like 90 pounds, like 5'7", 5'8",
yeah,
and have no muscle mass or anything, and that's definitely not healthy either.
No.
But I mean, we always have to take BMI with a grain of salt too, because it doesn't actually tell you content. It just tells you your size and weight, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good tool, believe it or not. Even though I think it gets a lot worse of a rap than it really deserves.
It's again another one of those things that it's like it's so dependent on what you're using it for. BMI on a scale for using it as like overall like health and how you're doing might not be the greatest tool. That's when you want to look at like maybe body fat percentage.
Yeah.
But for someone who's like either really, really like skinny or overweight, it's a good scale to get an idea for something like sarcopenia.
Or you could use it in conjunction with body fat too.
Of course.
Or you can use it with like waist and hip circumference, things like that.
Yeah, you don't want to use it solely as the only tool to measure your overall health.
BMI always says that I'm a overweight or obese person.
Yeah, I've always been overweight too.
I knew I needed to lose some weight.
But if you go and do body fat percentage, it's going to end up looking like a different number.
No, it does.
Greek gods, Greek gods.
Well, my problem with body fat, and it is not a lot of people will have the same problem, is because I lost a lot of weight. I have a lot of loose skin. So if I did like a what's it called? The one where you actually go in the fluids and you look at the dispersion and how much muscle. Do you remember what's that called?
I'm blanking on the name of it, but I know
Is it
exactly.
a DEXA scan? No,
I think it is. No, DEXA scan is.
Basically, there's the gold standard defined in your body fat is this test where you go into some water or some type of fluid, and basically how much water goes away or moves, you can tell how much fat or muscle that you have.
Yeah, they're calling it hydrostatic weighing.
Okay, hydrostatic weighing.
I think it has a different.
There's a different name that we'll get back to you guys on that. Maybe we'll put it in the caption or something like that.
Yeah.
But the easy way to do it for people like us is you use a fat caliper. So basically, you pinch your skin, and then the amount of space between the caliper can tell you your body fat. The problem with me is I have so much loose skin that those aren't always accurate.
Yes. Yeah.
So again, something that you take with a grain of salt. It's still better than really going on one of those scales that does the electric like stuff in your feet, because those are like there's really not a lot of evidence on those. I haven't looked at the evidence recently though either.
I've seen them in like supplement shops and stuff like that before.
Yeah.
So I'm not 100% certain on them either.
I have one.
Do you?
I don't have the one with the hands too. I just have the one with the feet.
See, I have the caliper.
Oh, I have the caliper too.
I'm a fan of the caliper because the calipers, I mean, if you don't have a tub or anything like that, it is. There's many different points that you can measure, and it is a pretty decent measuring tool.
Yeah.
But for obviously, you have different things going on.
I mean, I've used it before, and you like it's not a bad tool for me, even with like a bunch of loose skin. But like you take it sometimes with a grain of salt too. Like you have to also just look at yourself in the mirror.
Yeah,
you tell in the mirror.
Oh yeah,
the mirror tells me that I need to lose some weight.
Don't be so hard on yourself. You just keep moving, and it'll be fine.
Okay.
It's wintertime too.
Yeah, I guess we gotta.
You just got married. You went on a honeymoon.
The honeymoon is where it came from.
I know. I knew you were going to say that, but that's okay. You know what? That's life. You enjoyed yourself. You had fun. It was a good year.
Yeah. I do think that's probably everything we wanted to talk about here, though. Is there anything else you could think of?
No, just everything we mentioned already. The age-old thing that we keep repeating was just stay moving. And it's interesting for them to seek, different measurements and tools that we can use to monitor these things in the future.
Yeah, and it's definitely something that can get more complex. And like we said, like you just said too, keep moving, keep your muscles moving, keep doing strength training, find the exercise that you like to do that's best for you.
Of course.
And eat healthy.
Yeah. I
know it's very vague, but then if you don't know, ask your healthcare practitioner and they will help you eat healthier, I hope.
Exactly. All right. I think that's it then.
That's it. Thank you, everybody, and have a nice day.